So welcome back. We're going to continue our discussion of corporate social responsibility. So one of the questions you get asked a lot is, why even have a corporate social responsibility program? I mean, there's actually three reasons. First of all, corporations can say that they have some sort of an ethical responsibility to promote social justice. You should engage in corporate social responsibility activities because it's the right thing to do. Of course, alternatively, you can say corporate social responsibility is practical. It's easy. Why not implement corporate social responsibility programs? And of course, you can say that corporate social responsibility is necessary because in some ways, other forces do not ensure that corporations behave in a responsible sort of behavior, or governments do not behave in a responsible sort of behavior, or elements of society do not behave in a responsible manner. You know, when we look at this relationship between business, government, and society, they always say nature abhors a vacuum, and I would say so do business, government, and society. When governments in some ways fail to meet their obligations to society, businesses can step in to meet those obligations. When societies are failing to meet their responsibilities within a society, a government can step in, a government can step in to fill that, or a business can step in to fill that. So it's kind of this display or this kind of tug of war of power. Who is going to fill which responsibilities for which business, government, and society actors? So this is one way for a corporation to make sure that other elements in business, government, and society can play nice together. Now, let's think about which kinds of political ideologies we have in business and what their attitudes towards corporate social responsibility might be. Of course, we've got free market conservatives. And free market conservatives generally are going to be against the idea of corporate social responsibility. These are the kinds of people like Adam Smith. These are the ones that say that a corporation is most responsible when it is maximizing profits and distributing those profits to the owners. That is their definition of responsibility. There's no need for a corporation to actually go out and change society in any way. It's already benefiting society by providing jobs and making a profit. Okay? This is more of on the political spectrum towards the right. And then, of course, you have radical progressives. And radical progressives on the extreme left would also be against corporate social responsibility because they would say, no, the corporation should not be meeting any of society's needs. It should be governments doing that instead. So kind of in between the extreme right and the extreme left, you have more mainstream corporate managers, and then the progressive civil society who would think that in some way corporations have some sort of responsibility to people, to members of society. And again, this, if I were to illustrate it, you would look at the stakeholder model. Okay? There's kind of this reciprocal give and take tug of war between a corporation and stakeholders, and there's kind of this understanding of a mutual responsibility or obligation. Now, historically, I mean, I'll kind of cite some different management thinkers to give you an idea of it. You have, of course, Adam Smith, who would generally, as a free market conservative, be opposed to corporate social responsibility. He said that corporations are the most responsible when they're making a profit, and companies inherently exercise a degree of moral restraint. Then you have people like the father of modern management, Frederick Taylor. If you have not read Principles of Scientific Management, I highly recommend you do. It's available for free on Project Gutenberg, and I also have videos on Frederick Taylor, so if you'd like to know more about Principles of Scientific Management. But Frederick Taylor said actually a corporation is the most responsible when it is helping workers to be the best they can possibly be and sharing the profits with those workers. Very different understanding of corporate social responsibility. Furthermore, when a worker is encouraged to be their best, their output will be higher And when the output is higher, prices can be lower, and so everybody can enjoy, as Taylor was talking about, more shoes and more iron and more goods and things like that. And then Chester Barnard, so Taylor was maybe he wrote Principles of Scientific Management in 1911. And then Chester Barnard, writing in the 1930s in his book Functions of the Executive, said, well, actually, a manager is the most socially responsible when they look at the worker as a total person. You know, we all have kind of different faces or different masks. So just because they're a worker here, they may also be a father, a son, a member of a church, or a labor union. And when we work with our subordinates, we should try to embrace all of their different roles and give them assignments that would, A, not only contradict their outside roles, but would also enhance their outside roles. So for example, imagine a mother working in a factory and you ask her to paint toys with lead paint. Well, since she has children, she may not necessarily approve of that. But if you ask that same mother to help design toys that would be more appealing to children, that would enhance her role as a mother and also take advantage of the strengths that come with that role. Now, one of the reasons that social responsibility is becoming more and more mainstream is that stakeholder groups have gained more power. We see pluralism is certainly on the rise, and I mean pluralism a la stakeholder model. So stakeholder groups have more power to impose their agendas, and furthermore, the legal philosophies underneath corporate social responsibility are becoming more established and more mature. Now, historically, corporate social responsibility was not corporate at all. Historically, any sort of giving from a corporation actually came from the personal funds of executives within a corporation. So for example, Stephen Girard gave $6 million to a school designed to educate orphan boys. That came from Stephen Girard's personal coffers, not the corporation. Rockefeller did not give money from Standard Oil. However, he gave $550 million of his own money away during his lifetime. Andrew Carnegie, again another big executive, did not give in the corporate coffers, but gave from his own personal funds $350 million to be used for social causes. So it was individuals or wealthy individuals working for a corporation giving from their personal funds. That was an early definition of CSR. Now, some people also were opposed to CSR because of an argument stemming from social Darwinism. And social Darwinism basically says that, like regular Darwinism, in the social realm, there is this domain where rich people and dominant companies are morally superior. If you are rich or you have a strong company, that means you are ethically better than those around you. And of course, if you're poor or the company doesn't have a lot of money, then that's something that should be weeded out over time. Another idea that comes from social Darwinism is Thomas Malthus. Thomas Malthus was a priest who spoke about Malthusian population breakdowns. And he always said that you should not be good or take care of laborers because they were like rats. If you're too good to them, they'd reproduce too much, then there'd be too many workers, and then they'd starve to death. So basically just give them only enough money to survive and work and nothing more. And that was the most socially responsible thing that you could do. And by the way, Thomas Malthus was a priest. It's kind of surprising he would say that, right? Now, during the Progressive Era, some new ideas about corporate social responsibility emerged. First of all, that managers were trustees. So, as corporations become larger and owners, i.e. stockholders, are less involved in the day-to-day running of the corporations, managers were seen to be the custodians of the corporation, and they should run the corporation in the best interests of the firm. And managers, of course, had to start looking at the interest of the company's stakeholders. Managers also had to learn to subscribe to the service principle. And here's a couple of vocabulary terms. Let me just make sure I get these down here. So you have trustee and service principal. So a trustee, which is usually a manager, is an agent of a company whose corporate role puts him or her in a position of power over the economic well-being of the owners or stockholders, but also that they are in a position of power and responsibility over the various stakeholders of a company, which includes customers, employees, and communities. The service principle is this belief that managers serve society by making companies profitable, and that the aggregate success of managers and corporations overall would solve major social problems. Of course, there were different interpretations of this. Henry Ford thought that he understood corporate social responsibility the best. He had the policy of what he called the $5 a day man. Now the $5 a day man, you have to, and just think about the context of this. We're talking early 1900s. $5 a day was a lot of money for anybody in that time period to make. I mean, my grandpa lived during that time, and he was a farm laborer, made $0.25 a day. So $5 a day was a lot of money for a man to make. Now the $5 a day man had to show up to work on time, didn't drink, didn't hit his spouse, went to church, and lived in the company dorms. But what the $5 a day man really meant was that Henry Ford was basically spying on his workers and meddling in their personal affairs. And of course, because there were all these factory workers making $5 a day, there were also suddenly $5 a day haircuts, $5 a day restaurants, and so workers didn't save a lot of money. Then Henry Ford brought in men who weren't $5 a day men, journeymen, who competed with the $5 a day men. It caused all sorts of hate and discontent. It didn't really work out that well. Now, General Robert Wood believed that responsibility to customers, the public employees, believed that businesses had first a responsibility to customers, then the public, then the employees, then suppliers, and then finally to stockholders. And during the 1920s, there began to be organized charities, and corporations were contributing to these charities. Some of you may have played Monopoly and you're familiar with the community chest. That was a charity. The Red Cross was another example of this. The Boy Scouts. So at this time, I'm going to stop this video and we're going to shift gears and start talking about attitudes of corporate social responsibility from the 1950s until today. I'll see you then.